Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Yes, this is a blanket that was made for me for Christmas when I was a little baby, so that's going to be the backdrop for today. Recently, I was watching season 2 of Severance, which is a pretty universally acclaimed show on many levels. The originality, cinematography, production design, performances, and direction were all stunning. But one thing I realized as I was watching it was how there were many moments that were just silent, completely devoid of dialogue, music, etc. If anything, there might be some faint ambient noise to reflect wherever the scene is set, but for the most part, the shot is devoid of sound. And this is not a new phenomenon. In fact, there was a time where all films were silent. Watching this season of Severance reminded me just how impactful silence can be in cinema, and how sometimes the absence of sound can have a more profound impact on viewers than oversaturating a cinematic moment with a cacophony of noise. So I used film and TV as a more obvious example of this, but I feel like society as a whole just seems to be getting louder and more chaotic. Even as I was drafting the script for this video, I kept getting distracted by noise. The sound of my upstairs neighbors, my cat meowing, a car outside. The amount of distracted that I was getting by seemingly mundane noises probably points to some kind of sensory issue. There was even a point where I thought that I had ADD or even autism just because of how much certain noises bothered me. And it made no sense because I love noise. I love music and going to concerts and seeing movies in Dolby surround sound and listening to podcasts all day. I love the sound of my friends laughing and the sound of my cat purring and the sound of snow. Like, I love noise. But lately, everything feels like it's just getting to be too much, and I actually crave silence. And this is a little bit of a detour, but it actually annoys me how often people find silence to be awkward. I feel like when you're on a first date, there's this pressure to constantly fill the space with, endless conversation, when honestly, the most romantic relationships I've ever had are the relationships where I can sit in silence with another human being and actually enjoy it. Maybe this is a stretch, but maybe there's a reason why some of the most impactful art that we experience is devoid of sound. Maybe there's a reason why we need silence in order to sleep, which is one of the body's most important functions to its overall well-being. We hold moments of silence in periods of mourning. When there's a tragic event, what happens? You hold a moment of silence for the lives that were lost. And I understand that everybody is different when it comes to their threshold for sensory overload, but it's gotten to the point where I feel like all of this noise is at best overwhelming, but at worst completely unbearable. For some context, I grew up in the early 2000s, and I didn't have social media until I was in middle school. I didn't have an iPhone until I was in high school, and I spent most of my time, going to school, going to church, reading books that I checked out from the library, swimming, etc. Yes, I would go on YouTube from time to time, or maybe I would go on Webkinz on my family computer or some shit, but the vast majority of the time that I spent on social media and the internet in general was very limited. All of this changed in high school when I made an Instagram account. Now, that sounds so dramatic. All of this changed when I made an Instagram account. But it did, because at the time, Instagram was a much more casual place than it is now. Influencer culture and advertisements hadn't really blown up yet. And I loved it at the time because it felt way cooler and more personal and creative than any other social media app at the time. The main one at the time was Facebook. And so at the time, it was like if you had an Instagram, you were cool. And if you had a Facebook, you were like living in 1970, which I guess is kind of still the mindset that a lot of people have. I began to get pretty addicted to Instagram, which sounds kind of ironic in the context of this video because at the time, Instagram was a completely silent app. This was before you could put music on it, music to your stories, music on your posts or whatever. Like, the app itself was silent, but it's not anymore. Now we have Instagram Reels, and every post has a song that blares every time you open the app. And it's not just Instagram. It seems like every social media app has gotten louder. YouTube now has YouTube Shorts, which is a ripoff of Instagram Reels, which is a ripoff of TikTok videos, which is a ripoff of Snapchat, and the list goes on and on. Now, the lack of originality on every single social media platform is a video for a different day, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that the world seems louder than it has ever been before. Everyone has a podcast now. Everyone makes music. There are ads on every website. Music is louder. Concerts are louder. There's advertisements blaring when I pump gas into my car. I don't think I've ever gone into a public waiting room where there isn't something on the TV blaring or somebody on a FaceTime call. Go out in public and I guarantee you're gonna find at least one person wearing headphones. And it's probably me because I wear my headphones everywhere. And none of this is inherently bad. I actually think that it's a good thing that there are more resources and opportunities for people to express their creativity than ever before. I think it's cool that we have unlimited music and information and communication at our fingertips. The internet, which is the main source of noise in my life, is actually an enormous privilege. Heck, I'm even posting this video right now that's going to go on my YouTube channel and create more noise in the world. I think what's different nowadays is that you no longer have to seek out noise. You used to have to turn on the radio or buy tickets to a concert. Now, there is music everywhere. You can watch a concert on TikTok live. You no longer have to seek out noise. The noise seeks out you. And for a lot of people, that can actually be pretty destructive. There have actually been studies that have been conducted that show that quietness is a luxury. In fact, I don't even think that I need a PhD to be able to prove that living a quiet and peaceful life is actually a privilege. But before I get too ahead of myself, I want to first recognize that I think that noise can also be a luxury. Okay, no pun intended, but hear me out. When we think about deaf and hard of hearing people, luckily there are more resources and accommodations now than there used to be, which is a great thing, but the world is still not designed to make it easy on people that are deaf or honestly disabled people in general. And this is more than just not being able to hear your favorite song or listen to Harris Dickinson's accent work, which is incredible in my opinion. Deaf and hard of hearing issues can affect speech, communication, employment, independence, mental well-being, and can be tied to other health concerns like neurological disorders or developmental disabilities. I want to be very clear that I am not a member of the deaf or hard of hearing community, and so I don't want to speak for them or have this be taken as me standing on a soapbox or trying to infantilize this community or anything like that. I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of disabled people in the world, and this world and these policies are not designed to make life even livable for some of them. I just felt like I could not make a video essentially complaining about noise without at least recognizing obstacles that can be faced by the inability to register sound at all. Now back to this whole quietness as a luxury point. I mentioned earlier in the video this idea of living a quiet and peaceful life. And I find it very interesting that the word quiet is so often associated with the word peace. And I think in a straightforward sense, that association stems from the fact that if a society is at peace and not at war, the community is not plagued with the ever-present noise that accompanies socio-political unrest, like planes and sirens and gunshots and bombs. And like most things, this quiet as a luxury concept also has a lot to do with capitalism. Think about it, right? So in order to live in a quiet area, you have to be separated from things that produce noise. And what separates you from this? Land. And what does land cost? Money. And I want to be careful about this, right? Because this is not to say that living in a quiet area necessarily makes you wealthy. Rural areas are some of the most impoverished in our country. But rural also doesn't equate to quiet. Over the years, there's been an emphasis placed on this concept of unwinding, retreating to a secluded or at least quiet location, whereas at other points in history, it was more trendy to live in cities. I feel as though that pendulum has shifted, and now many wealthy people are moving out of major cities to more rural parts of the US. I was even looking on Airbnb because I'm planning a trip to New Mexico, so if you have any recommendations in Santa Fe, let me know. But anyways, I was looking on Airbnb, and a lot of the more scenic and quiet places were significantly more expensive than the ones in more urban and suburban areas. This phenomenon became even more apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic, when more people began to work virtually and opted to live in more affordable, spacious areas than in major cities, which they were no longer tied to since they could now work from home. There's even science that shows that employees are more productive when distractions, many of which are noise-related, are minimized at the workplace. Quiet luxury is also a common term used in the fashion industry to describe not only clothing, but a lifestyle characterized by understated elegance and refined consumption, emphasizing exclusivity and discerning taste without overt displays of wealth. Think about a character like Siobhan Roy. If you don't watch Succession, basically she is an uber-rich businesswoman who comes from generational wealth. We never see her dress overtly. She'll opt for something like a $2,000 plain white shirt that the untrained eye wouldn't be able to detect if it was from Walmart or Prada, over a Chanel bag with a Chanel logo prominently displayed. When people do display their wealth overtly, whether it's through logos on clothes or flashy vehicles, etc., it's often seen as tacky. There's also a lot of racial undertones to this whole idea of quiet luxury, which I don't think I'm going to get into in this video specifically, but it kind of just boils down to the fact that white people don't want to see black people succeed. Tale as old as time. This video wasn't a carefully constructed video essay, like I'm no Mina Lay. It's just more so me rambling about something that's been on my mind lately, but I have come to believe that there is a real power in silence. Not to get too granola girl on you, but this year I've been feeling very overstimulated. Not just by noise, but kind of just in general. About 2 months ago, I started going on long walks every weekend at a park by my house. Sometimes I listen to music or audiobooks, but most of the time I just listen to the sounds around me. And there's so much I didn't notice before. I know this sounds really corny, but the sound of a bird chirping, a kayak passing nearby on the river, a tree branch snapping under my foot. And even when it comes to movies, because I somehow find a way to relate everything back to movies, I have a growing appreciation for intentional sound design and directors who aren't afraid to let their films breathe. I saw a film recently called Certain Women, and it had minimal dialogue and virtually no score, but the stripped back nature of the sound design allowed me to focus in more on the details of the scenes and the nuances in the actors' performances. Another film with incredible sound design, although definitely not a quiet film, is Sound of Metal. It's a film about a drummer that begins to lose his sense of hearing and the impact that has on his life. Riz Ahmed gives an incredible performance, as he so often does, and I would highly recommend the film. We all know that there is power in noise. There is power in music and dialogue and laughter. There's power in speaking up and shouting out. But there's also an incredible power to be found in silence. After all, silence is just another way of using your voice. Just finished filming this video. Say hi to my cat. Anyways, there is definitely going to be some points in this video that are a little bit cringe and corny, because looking back at the script that I wrote, it does sound a little bit button poetry-esque, and if you know what button poetry is, you should be in therapy by now. But anyways, it's definitely a little bit out of my comfort zone. I don't typically make commentary videos like this, so let me know if you liked it, if you didn't like it, whatever. Just trying out different types of videos on this channel. But yeah, thanks for watching, and also if I'm like looking off into the distance for the majority of this video, it's because I didn't memorize the script, so sorry! I'm sorry!